Welcome in, everyone, to the Bend Oregon Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Rob Eggers, principal broker here at Duke Warner Realty. 20 years experience selling real estate here in Bend. And I am with my business partner today, Katrina Swisher, also 20 years experience selling real estate here in Bend. And today we are asking and looking at a question of the accuracy of the Zillow Zestimates. So the Zillow estimates are obviously a tool that most people utilize and look at pretty regularly. People are curious all the time what their home values are. And as realtors, we run into this a lot because that's, I think, by and large, kind of how people judge the value of their home. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Zillow estimates, give our opinion on them, and also kind of contrast how we go about pricing a home. So first of all, Katrina, I'm going to turn it over to you because you did some research here online and just looked at how Zillow kind of comes up with their numbers. And I'm very impressed because you're going to actually in detail explain the algorithm. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Good luck with that.
So what is a Zestimate? How does Zillow come up with your home's value? That's the big question. One of the first things that they use, it would be the home characteristics, including the square footage, location, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, the typical general information.
Well, I'm glad to see that, because obviously you have to use similar size, location, number of bathrooms, bedrooms, all of that. So
Exactly.
That's good.
Yes.
So that's a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the basics.
Right.
Then they use the on-market data, not sold data, but current on-market data, such as listing prices, active
listings.
Listing price, descriptions, comparable homes in the area, and how long they've been on the market.
Okay. Do you want to dive into that one or go through all of them and then come back a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, I think we could name the things and we'll circle back around and discuss those.
So the next point that they use for figuring out data.
Next point is off-market data, tax assessments, prior sales, and other public records.
Okay.
And then lastly, market trends, including seasonal changes, which obviously we have a lot of that around here. Yeah,
for sure. So that's a pretty good list of things that they use, but maybe we'll dive into each one a little bit. So home characteristics, including square footage, location, number of bathrooms. Obviously, that's very important. We always say you can't compare a 2,500 square foot home with a 3,500 square foot home. So hopefully they're looking at similar sized properties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's just one of the factors in that whole group would be the square footage. But as you look at location too, that can vary so much, even on the same street.
Yes.
From what one house is like to what another one is like.
That's a good point. Give an example of that, because you mentioned one earlier on like, say, a busy street.
Right. You could have, a home on one is on the busy side of the road, backs up to a busy street, and the other home does not. I mean, there's a huge difference in your pricing.
Right. It could be a neighboring home right down the street, but if the comparable that Zillow is using backs to Mount Washington,
right,
that's going to make a massive difference.
Yeah.
And Zillow doesn't necessarily consider that.
Doesn't consider that, or whether it's mountain views or river.
Yeah.
One side of the street has the river, the other side of the street does not.
Absolutely. The home next door could have a killer view of, Mount Jefferson, but your home doesn't. And the one that just sold is really expensive, and it's Zillow's using that.
Right.
Yep.
So just because it's in a similar location does not mean it's going to be all the same.
Right. Also, square footage, I think, can be an issue, because like I've got a listing that I'm looking at right now. The Deschutes County Assessor's Office has it listed at 1,900 square feet. but the home in actuality is 2,100 square feet. So Zillow is comparing 1,900 square foot homes in this case, when the home is actually 2,100 square feet. So it doesn't know that there's a discrepancy there.
Right. And and in that case, it's not counting the bonus room. So it's not even listing the bonus room as any value in the county records. And a bonus room, as we know, is very valuable.
Very much.
That can make a difference in a sale to a buyer if it has that extra flex space or not.
Right, exactly. So I love that Zillow is looking at those things, but this is a robot that we're talking about. This is not a human that's looking at it going, okay, this home has views, this one does not. This one backs against a busy street, this one does not. This home smells like cat pee. I mean, this one does not. I mean, Zillow can't tell. Zillow doesn't have a good sniffer.
Yes.
Right? They can't look at all those variables, which are huge when it comes to value. The other thing that Zillow doesn't do, which ties into square footage that we didn't even talk about, is actually floor plan.
Floor plan.
I mean, you could have two homes that are 2,500 square feet. One's got a great room floor plan, master and spare bedroom separation. Everything's clean. The other one you go into, it's like a corn maze.
Right.
And you can't even find where the back door is because it's so confusing. Well, that's going to greatly affect the value.
Or say it's reverse living.
Yeah.
Versus, standard.
Right, exactly. So it looks at those variables, that's great, but it doesn't dive into them at all.
And the amenities in the home. If your home, same neighborhood, same age, they're both built in the year 2000, one home is completely updated currently, all the new styles and trends, and the other home is completely original.
Yeah.
It does not know that. Huge difference in the pricing.
Huge difference. I mean, you could have just done a $300,000 remodel, but it looks at your square footage.
Right.
That's it.
I mean, there's a lot of factors that it's not comparing. Yard space could be the same sized lot. One's on a hillside, one is not.
Yeah.
One is landscaped beautifully with, pergola and paver patios and fire pit, and one is dead.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. Well, I think we've definitely dove into how critical some of those differences can be on that one. So let's look at the next one, which is on-market data, such as listing price, description, comparable homes in the area, and days on the market.
Right. So, I mean, this last year is a perfect example of how much that can really change and impact the accuracy of your pricing, because we've had so much change in our list pricing. So homes that are on the market that haven't sold yet, that may still be inaccurately priced because they're trying to, navigate the way the market is right now. So you have overpriced listings.
Yeah.
And your neighbor's house is, listed $200,000 more than it should be.
Yep. And then that's bumping up your Zestimate value because it's Zillow's thinking, oh, this home is worth X.
Yes. Yeah.
If your neighbor's way off, it's going to mean that you're probably off too. Okay.
Yeah, I think on market, I mean, it's good to know what you're competing with. But that's something that we look at in a more detailed way than Zillow's just looking at it to use as a price comparison.
Yeah, I mean, for me, we'll talk about this in a minute, but the active properties are more just to know like what your competition is, not necessarily how to price.
Right.
But it's like, okay, we need to beat these other homes. What are they priced at so we can beat them?
Right.
But this is not necessarily how we judge the pricing. It can be sometimes in a low market, in a low inventory environment, because if your comps from 6 months ago are coming in at 650, but there's nothing on the market under 7, all your competition is 725. Maybe you can go in. Maybe just because of that, you could bump your price up a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So we definitely look at that as something to take into consideration.
Yeah.
But we would know if the neighbor's home is grossly overpriced, and that's impacting, what the Zestimate is showing.
Exactly. Okay, so the next one is off-market data. tax assessments, prior sales, and other publicly available records.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on that with the one that we're looking at.
With the tax assessment, you mean with the
Right, with the
square
county
footage difference?
records
Yeah.
being incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, and then the tax assessments.
Yeah. So for years, well, really, as long as I've been doing this, we never look at tax assessed value to figure out real market value. It's always, for the most part, with the exception of kind of like the recession where everything crashed, the tax assessed value is always quite a bit lower. So we don't even really look at that.
Right.
And if Zillow is pulling that, that's odd. I mean, maybe that works in other places of the country.
Right.
It doesn't work here.
But those tax assessments are done differently county to county. So
Yeah.
I don't know how they are, using that.
Does say prior sales and other publicly available records. So obviously prior sales is good, but we talked about those difference between those sales.
Well, you could have a sale 6 months ago and then they bought it. The house was in horrible condition, had cat pee, it was trashed.
My favorite.
And someone bought it. They went in, completely remodeled it, and now it's back on the market.
Yeah.
Well, that past sale is really going to have a negative impact on where it would be priced today with a remodel.
Yeah. Zillow doesn't look at those things. But we do when we're looking at all that. So, okay. And then last one, this is a kind of a weird one for me. Market trends, including seasonal changes in demand. So how does Zillow know that?
Exactly. That's the question. I mean, does Zillow know our seasons, our winter and our spring, and when as we know, our spring is typically our busiest time? Does Zillow know that?
Yeah.
Does it know that we just got 6 inches of snow, or in the years of Snowmageddon, and that's really impacting? If someone needed to list in the middle of that, that's definitely going to have an impact. There's no way Zillow can know that. I would imagine that's based on a national trend.
Yeah.
But that varies so much here.
Yeah, that really does. I mean, our market, I've always kind of referred to Bend as kind of a light switch market. It can change so fast. It's like we're hopping along and all of a sudden it's like things get quiet, or vice versa. All of a sudden the phones start ringing. There's no way that Zillow's knowing that.
Right.
They don't really know the market as far as what's happening right now and all that. That's kind of an odd one that they have that in there. I mean, again, we're just getting this off of their website, how they calculate these things.
Right. Yeah.
So
I think it's just very unpredictable to sum it up.
It is very unpredictable. I mean, we've had years where, like last fall, interest rates are at 7%. Very, very, very slow. Other years in the past, it could be really good all the way up to Thanksgiving. So it just don't really know exactly.
Right.
Kind of year to year and kind of take it as what's the market doing right now.
Exactly. I mean, that's where our experience comes into play, and taking into consideration our current market conditions as of today.
Yep.
I mean, that it's different
What's
than it
happening
was
now?
2 weeks ago. It's different than it'll be 2 weeks from now. What is happening now?
It's hugely important. I mean, even in the last couple months, we've seen some variation of just with interest rate fluctuations.
Right.
Beginning of the year, we had interest rates at 6.1. Now they're high 6s. So that even those little fluctuations make a difference month to month with interest rates bouncing as big as those bounces are right now.
Right.
So that is kind of how Zillow says that they do it. And there's one thing that really was kind of shocking to see is that we found on the website, it says statistics for Zestimates for on-market homes is within 20% of the actual selling price more than 99% of the time. Now that to me is kind of like, that's your get out of jail free card right there. It's like, I'm within 20%, 99% of the time. It's like, well, you better be.
Right. I mean, that's shocking. We do not have that kind of margin of error.
That's huge.
There's just, even 5% is,
It makes a big difference.
right.
So they're basically saying that for $1 million home, we're going to be within $200,000 of accuracy.
And that's the difference of
crazy.
getting your home sold or not.
Oh, that's a difference of 9 months on the market, very frustrated seller versus, okay, accurate list price. Now we got our home sold.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference.
You really have one shot, to come on the market and do it right the first time. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing your tail and trying to make up for that the entire time you're listed. You're going to have longer days on the market, more challenges getting to the correct price, likely not as strong of an offer because the buyers are going to see your changes in your price and think that they have more room to negotiate versus if you just come out of the gate with the right pricing. It's number one.
Yeah,
it's the number one important thing to do.
All right, so you can really see there that 20% margin is huge. And we have some examples that we've pulled up on Zillow that just kind of show what a huge margin there is. So this is a home that I kind of recently did a market analysis on. And for those that are not watching on YouTube, I'll just kind of explain the numbers. But I did the market analysis on it, and of course I pulled up the Zillow estimates and see what the online estimates were. Zillow had the home listed at 1.98, so $1,998,000. So basically 1.1. Realtor.com has it at $1,354,000. So a $250,000 difference just in those two valuations right there.
Yeah.
That's a huge gap.
Huge.
Another house I just recently did a market analysis on. Now, my market analysis, after seeing the home, it's absolutely gorgeous. They've done so many upgrades, and she's like basically an interior designer, so the home looks professionally staged. Take all of that into consideration. Zillow can't do that.
Right.
So Zillow for this particular house came in at 571. My CMA came in at, I think they could list it at 649. So that's almost a $70,000 difference, $80,000 difference.
Right.
Right, $80,000 difference. That's huge. So the other Zestimate that was on Redfin on this one, $600,000. So still $50,000 less than what my estimate was. So it just shows that these online things can have huge variation and be way off compared to what our numbers are.
Right.
All right, so before we go any further, I'm going to mention our sponsor of our show today, which is Duke Warner Realty, and they are a premier real estate firm here in Bend that was established in 1967 by Duke and Kitty Warner and is still family owned and operated to this very day. Duke Warner Realty has served thousands and thousands of customers throughout Central Oregon over the last 55 years, and the brokerage not only features Bend's best real estate agents, but also the most experienced, with the average agent at Duke Warner having 15 years of real estate experience. So if you want your next real estate transaction done right, with honesty and integrity, give Duke Warner Realty a call today at 541-382-8262 or visit them online at dukewarner.com. All right, so for the last segment here, we're going to talk about how we go ahead and price a home out, which is, we look at a lot of the similar variables at Zillow, but we actually have eyes, ears, and a nose to determine if those things are accurate and whatnot versus just being a computer algorithm. So one of the first things we do, of course, is the comparative market analysis, and then boiling that down is comparing the active listings, and we want to look at the active listings so we can beat the competition. We look at the sold listings, ideally within the last 6 months, and then we really want to compare apples to apples only. So let's dive into those three things really quick. Comparing active listings so you can beat the competition. How do you look at, say, active listings when you're doing a CMA?
I think I look up to a price point that we're going to be in to see what are the buyers looking at up to that price point. If we're going to list at 625, I'm going to look up to 650 probably, just to see, and maybe between like 5 or 600 to 650, just to see what other homes the buyer's looking at. So that's kind of the first thing I'm going to look at. Then I'm going to break it down from there. Is that a 3-bedroom with any extra space, or is it just a 3-bedroom? My listing has an office, so I'm going to take that into consideration. I'm just going to kind of break down each active listing out there in that price point that's nearby in the similar location, not necessarily the same neighborhood, but again, kind of looking at it from a buyer's perspective and what else they have to choose from.
Yeah.
And does mine stand out? Is mine going to be better?
Yeah, I think that's good. I look at the active listings similarly, and also just kind of know what your competition is. Like if you're doing a radius, say, for example, around a home, are there 10 other homes for sale or none?
Right.
That's going to make a big difference too. Like, can you get more aggressive maybe?
Right.
With your pricing, because there's nothing else for sale around it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I really look at the active listings, not so much for how to price the home, but like, do we have competition? And then if we do have competition, are we beating that competition? Mm-hmm. Like if you have a home that you feel you're looking at it going, wow, this thing is probably nicer than the home that I'm comping out, and it's $25,000 less than what the seller wants to sell their home for, you're probably going to have a problem.
Right.
That other home's going to beat you out. So that's how I look at the active listing. So the next thing is, of course, comparing the sold listings, ideally within the last 6 months, similar to how an appraiser would do it. Mm-hmm. So what are some of those things that you look at with sold listings?
Well, you really need to tighten up your square footage. Like you said, apples to apples. We're not comparing a 2,500 square foot home to a 3,500 square foot home. They're priced differently. They obviously there's so many difference in that square footage difference. So that's we really want to get close on the square footage, and we want to get close on the bedrooms, bathrooms, and then the amenities. We're looking at the pictures and knowing what those other comparable solds are. Do they have extras? Have they been remodeled? Do they offer, any extras? Or are they on the busy side of the road?
Right.
All those things. And we're diving into that in detail to really compare, to pull those best comparisons, the closest comparisons.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So looking at those solds, like she said, 6 months is really ideal, kind of like an appraiser. And apples to apples, which is the next thing, but it's just so important. You really have to look at all the variables that home has and make sure you're comparing it straight across, because so many people say, well, my neighbor sold for, $800,000. Their home could literally be worth $650 if it's half the size, but the neighbor down the street, if they've got 3,000 square foot and you've got 2,000, you can't do that. Ideally, I like to have the listings be great within 100 square feet. If it's a really huge home, say 3,500 square feet, maybe you have a variation of like up to 300 or 400 square feet, because square footage, each little square foot isn't as critical at that point. But a smaller home, like 1,500 to 2,500 square feet, I like to get within 100 square feet. So
yeah, and I think, really, you can't just, there could be a house down the street that's brand new construction, top of the line, custom home, solid hardwood floors, and your home is more basic finishes.
Right.
Huge difference there.
Huge difference.
Where it's a lot easier as we dive into neighborhoods that are very similar, and the homes are all very similar, and they're finished with the same type of finishes. But there can be just such huge variations, and Zillow doesn't know that. We have to dive in, and we do. We take the time to dive in.
Yeah. The first step we take when doing a market analysis is seeing the home. I always tell people, okay, well, you want me to give you a pricing analysis? That's fine. The first thing I need to do is come over, see the home, get a quick tour. It literally takes 15, 20 minutes because I want to see what that floor plan looks like. I want to see what the amenities are. I want to see if it smells like cat pee.
Yeah, you need to smell it.
Yeah.
You
got to see what you're looking out of the kitchen window. Curb appeal is huge. Got to see what the driveway looks like. You got to see what the backyard looks like. You got to see what the neighbor looks like. Unfortunately, your neighbor can have a big impact.
Right.
You know, if you're down in Deschutes River Woods, there's a lot of beautiful properties down there, but then there's some with, you know, wash machines and cars parked out there. And if that's right next door, that's going to influence a buyer. So yeah, all those things are going to influence your pricing.
And the floor plan, like we mentioned.
Yeah, floor plan is huge. So the first thing we do is get into the home and look at it. And if not, I call that a blind CMA. I tell the seller, this is a blind CMA. It's like almost like a Zillow estimate at that point. I may as well be a robot because I'm only going to get you within 20% accuracy.
Exactly.
You know, because you just don't know without seeing it.
If there's damage, you know, dog scratches on the floors, or the house needs to be painted, or, you know, it's just rough, wear and tear.
Right.
We can't see that by just pulling up the data, and that's what Zillow's doing, and that makes a huge difference. So we need to get in there, you know, and that can definitely change it. Yeah, probably by 20% in some cases.
It really can. It's just so critical. I can't stress it enough because too many people compare their homes with homes that are not like theirs. They think, oh, it's in the neighborhood or it's down the street, so that means it's a good comp for me. No,
it has a 3-car garage. You do not.
Yes.
I mean, the list goes on.
The list goes on. It really does. And I would rather take a very, very close apples to apples home that's maybe in a different neighborhood versus one that's way off that's right down the street.
Right.
Yeah, you got to just look at the similar features that particular home has. And of course, the other thing that we do when pricing a home is knowing the market firsthand. That's a huge one, and that goes along with the next bullet point we have, which is our 20 years of experience.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes into that. You can come up with a number on paper, but if you don't know what's happening in our market, you might not know how to adjust for that number.
Exactly. I mean, last fall is a perfect example of that. You know, what the comps would show on paper. And obviously those comps are already sold. So they've sold in the previous market conditions, which, like you said, can change. You know, it's a light switch. And that light switch went off last fall.
Yeah, it did.
And so my comps on paper could say your house is valued at this. Today's market, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Just because of buyer demand. The buyer activity went to a complete halt. And at that point, I'm going to have to price your home more competitively, more attractively to get any buyer that's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the experience goes a long ways in just knowing the market and being full-time. I hate to knock somebody who's doing this on the side, but it's tough if you have another job and then you sell a piece of real estate every now and again because you really don't know the market as well as the people that are doing it full time. So they might say, yeah, in the fall last year, look at it, look what the comps are. They're huge. You could price it at X because they're not in the market. They don't know that light switch has been flicked.
Right.
Necessarily.
Right. And we know on our experience being not only doing this for 20 years each, but in one place, in Bend. Oftentimes we have a number in our head based on location and neighborhood that we kind of can start with and base it off of because our experience tells us that, you know, I know that neighborhood. Yeah. I know what range that's going to be in. I know what the buyers are looking at in that 1.5 range, and I know what to expect the home to be at that price point.
Right.
So all those factors come into play. And then we work on it even together, not only you and I together, but with our other agents in our office.
Yeah, we'll pick everybody's brain
to really get on the same page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are complicated problems to solve.
Mm-hmm.
How much is my home worth? It's one of the most difficult questions we get as a realtor. And the variables that come into play are huge, and you have to just, really know how to examine them all and figure it out.
It does not do us any favors, and certainly not our client, our seller, to price incorrectly, to overprice, to come in high. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to end up with a listing we can't sell. And now we're going to have a seller who is frustrated. And so there's no gain in that for us to want to price the home higher than it's actually worth and going to sell for.
Right.
So it's really important to take that time to dial it in very specifically. And not everyone does that. And we know that. We know people will come in high for various reasons.
Yeah.
And no, thank you. I don't want that listing because I can't sell it.
It's not worth it.
No.
We we call that in our industry, we call that buying the listing, where an agent will come in and be like, well, the comps are at $1 million, but I'm going to say it's worth $1.3 million. Mm-hmm. The seller's like, oh, wow, awesome. I'll go with them. And then they hammer him for the next 6 months for price reductions.
Right.
And they're under contract with that agent. They're not going to switch midstream. Mm-hmm. That's just hard to do. You're kind of locked in at that point. But we do not operate that way. We would rather tell someone the upfront truth about what we feel the value of the home is. And then if you want to try higher, let us know. We can have that discussion. Mm-hmm. But we're at least going to tell you honestly up front, here's what we really think it's going to sell at.
Right.
So last thing with this is, I think with the Zestimates, with Zillow, you can, I think, get a good idea if you live in a homogeneous neighborhood, like the polished neighborhoods I'll use as an example.
Right.
If you live in a polished neighborhood, I bet your Zestimate's going to be pretty darn accurate. Yes, there's going to be variations within that neighborhood, but we're talking about same builder. They're all in the same lot size. They're generally all built at the same time, and they're generally built with all the same materials. That's what you're looking for.
Exactly.
You got the same HOA, the same amenities, apples to apples. That's what we love. Where Zillow does not do a good job is if you have a unique home, like say on the West Hills or someplace where you've got, I don't know, really kind of almost anywhere
that's not a tract
neighborhood. It's going to be unique. So if you can find the identical home that sold 3 months ago, that's your best comp. But that's very unlikely with most homes. They're most of the time they're all different. And there is no cookie cutter example unless you live in that like a tract neighborhood.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think we still take into consideration what Zillow has to say. It's an important, piece to know. It carries a lot of weight for buyers and sellers. There's a lot of influence there for them. If a buyer's looking and Zillow has a number and our listing is a lot different than that is going to, play into it. So we do look at it.
Yeah.
But as just one of our factors. I mean, it doesn't really influence where we're pricing things. It's just something that we do need to be aware of.
Well, I actually look at it more just to know where the seller's head's at. I mean, that's one of the first things I'll do is like, okay, I'm going to look at all the market numbers or the estimate numbers. I'll call them all the estimate numbers because that's really what the seller's been looking at, and I know what I'm up against. And it's hard sometimes because we have to dispel those online valuations a lot of times. Say, I'm sorry that Zillow thinks your home is here, but it's actually down here, and here's why. And that can be hard for some sellers to get and understand.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. At the end of the day, we are live people
right.
who have been in your home, who are experienced in the market. And I think that really, is something to consider versus just a computer algorithm.
Yeah, been doing it a lot longer than Zillow has.
Right.
All right, well, I hope that was a good discussion for you guys to kind of hear more about just the differences between how realtors come up with their values versus a Zestimate and just all that goes into it. There's a lot of different variables. And of course, Katrina and I are here for you guys. So if you want a free, no obligation consultation to how much your home is worth, just give us a call here at Dirk Warner Realty and we'd be happy to come and do that for you. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you're on YouTube checking it out, please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment. We'd love to know what you're thinking about it. And if you're listening on a podcast app, be sure to follow the show and click that notification bell so you can be notified each time we drop a new episode. So thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Take care.